Here's Chapter 18 of the Ballad of Lucy Whipple. Chapter 18, Summer 1852, in which I say goodbye. Brother Claymore prepared to make his rounds about the mountains and the rivers again, this time to raise the money to take us to the Sandwich Islands. Full as I am of the Spirit of God, I feel I could swim there and live on locusts and wild honey like the prophets of old, but I can't ask that of my family, he told Jimmy, as they tied Clyde's belongings onto Tiny Apostle. I know my brother miners will want to help send forth to the glory of God me and these innocent children and my wife-to-be, the lovely Mrs. Whipple. Sister Whipple, Mom said. Then her eyes brightened merry. Sister Claymore. After Brother Clyde left, Mama spent an unseemly amount of time looking off into the distance and sighing. I would have liked to write to Gram and tell her about the fire, Mama, Mary, and Clyde, and my banishment to the Sandwich Islands, where I would face a future going barefoot and eating coconuts like Robinson Crusoe. But I couldn't. I had no paper, no ink, and no snowshoe to carry a letter to San Francisco. So instead I climbed up the ravine as far as I could on the path soggy with ash and mud, and called to her, "Gram! It's me, Lucy! I need you!" I knew she couldn't hear me, but I felt better anyway. I added, just in case, "Please send apples and chicken stew!" July came to Lucky Diggins, while Mama waited for Brother Clyde to return, and I just waited. Meanwhile, a miracle was bringing books back to me, books that had survived the fire because they had not been in the boarding house, but in some miner's tent far up the river, books that arrived from Sacramento or San Francisco, sent by someone who had borrowed one in the past and wanted to replace what was lost, books handed from miner to miner over the impassable mountains. I sniffed them, read a little, packed them in a potato sack, and waited some more. "If we're going to go, I wish to goodness we'd just go," I told Lizzie one day, while we sewed a patch on the ceiling of the tent. "You don't sound too happy about going." "Doesn't seem to matter." "I guess you're not much for adventures. Are you afraid?" "Yes, I'm afraid. I'm afraid I'll never get to go home to Massachusetts now. The Sandwich Islands must be half a world away." "So don't go," Lizzie said. "And I sure don't look forward to another boat trip and starting all over again to make friends and settle in. You know, you don't have to go." "Well, of course I do. I have to go." "Don't I?" I said to Lizzie. "Don't I?" said to myself. Lizzie looked at me in a way that made me desperate to change the subject. "Who's more handsome, Rusty or Snooze McGrath?" I asked her. "The gent," answered Lizzie. "Well, of course you'd say that. You're sweet on him." "Rubbish," said Lizzie. "How about you, Miss Lucy? Who do you think is handsome?" "Nobody here. All boneheads and bandits." I thought sometimes about falling in love, but only late at night in the dark where no one could see me blush. I could imagine Ivanhoe and Rowena kissing, but Lucy Whipple and some miner? Not likely. Anyway, I'm off to the Sandwich Islands, where I'll probably marry a coconut farmer and eat dried fish and never have a new book to read. I pushed the needle so fiercely through the dingy canvas that I near sewed my finger to the tent, and faced having to stay in Lucky Dickens until one of us rotted away. "Those books sure mean a lot to you," Lizzie said later as she left. "I can think of lots of things I'd miss more than books if I was dragged across the ocean to some island." Who's going to what island?" It was Belle Scatter that was, cradling a puny, red, squalling infant in her arms. Little fond as I was of Belle, hers was the first new face I had seen since the fire. I made Belle sit down and tell me about her married life and what in tarnation she was doing back in this ash heap, and as she brought chicken or cheese or paper or pens while I took and comforted the baby. Belle obviously still needed more practice. "There's some boxes over to my pa's tent," said Belle. "Me and Mr. Rush and Fanny Melinda came to visit and say goodbye. Too many lawyers coming to California. Besides, I think it's no fit place to rear a child, so we're going east to New York." Belle's face was as shiny bright as a new skillet. Imagine, New York, indoor privies and horse-drawn carriages and big hats with flowers. Back east. While I was heading into Robinson Crusoe country, Belle was going to New York to wear a big flowered hat in her indoor privy. She moved to take Fanny Melinda back, and the baby started up her squalling and fussing again. "Seems to me," I said, bouncing the little mite, "this one is a mighty big handful. How are you going to manage her all the way across the country to New York?" "Well," Belle said, with a cunning look on her face, "that's why I came over here to see you. I know you've been hankering to go to Massachusetts since you got here. What about you leaving with us? If your mamma says yes, we would chaperone and pay your way in exchange for your being nursemaid to Fanny Melinda." She smiled at the baby in my arms, and the baby started to scream again. "Belle, truly?" I danced Fanny Melinda around that tent as if we were in the governor's ball. When? Oh, when would we go? After tracking in on that measly burned-out path, I don't hanker to trek on out again. We'll wait until wagons can get through. Should be soon now. Week or 2 or 3. Didn't sound so soon to me, but it was the best offer I had got in a long time. We shook hands on the deal, and I danced all the way home. I was going back to Massachusetts. Hallelujah and goodbye, California, I called. Good riddance to ash and dust and mud. Goodbye, yellow hills and dry cracked earth, pine cones and acorn cakes, evergreens, mountain peaks, and blue sky. Goodbye, golden meters and rattlesnake Jake, I added, laughing, and the dag-diggity miner in his union suit. Goodbye, long, soft autumn nights and the smell of pines and the hills ablaze with poppies. My dancing got slower and quieter. Goodbye, Jimmy and Lizzie and the gent. I sighed and went the rest of the way in silence. When I got home, there was Brother Claymore back, sitting on the floor of the tent, head in his hands. Mama was saying, "It don't matter, Clyde. We don't need to go anywhere. We can get married and open the boarding house again." He looked stricken, so Mama took a breath and said, "Or we can wait until you raise the rest of the money. I know there aren't many people around, and those that are can't give like they used to, but we're not old. We can wait a year or 2. And at that they both looked stricken. "Mama," I said, "you don't need as much passage money as you thought. I'm not going with you. I have made arrangements to go back east with Belle Scatter. I'm finally going home, Mama." It was quiet as a spring rain. You couldn't even hear breathing. I finally said, "Mama?" "Clyde will get the rest of the money. He can sell Apostle. When he comes back we must all be ready. Now, Lucy, have you— Mama, didn't you hear me?" I heard wind stirring in the trees, squirrels chattering over nuts, the river rippling through the rocks. I did not hear a foolish thing like you saying you're not going with us. "What about my standing like a tub on my own bottom?" "You can stand like a tub just fine in the Sandwich Islands, thank you very much. Now no more talking about it. But Mama, nothing. I swear when I die that will be carved on my tombstone. But Mama. Mama, sit down. I want to say something. Lucy, I don't have time for your wobblies. Mama, sit!" And which of us was more surprised when Mama obeyed, I couldn't tell. Going west again is Brother Clyde's dream, and yours, not mine. I am going home. Mama opened her mouth to speak again, but nothing came out. "Never thought I'd see you speechless, Mama. Never thought I'd see you turning your back on your own family." "Now, Mama, it'll be all right. Prairie is big enough to help you, and Sierra is nearly 6, and you'll have Brother Clyde, too. I'll give you the money left from my pickle crock. I won't need it. Go west and find your heart's desire, and let me find mine. But California nothing, Mama." After a supper of rabbit and acorn mash and cheese from Belle, we all sat around the tree stump table while Mama counted out the nuggets and coins in the pickle crock and added it to what Brother Clyde had collected. We figured the dust at $1 a pinch and added it in. Not enough. Mama sighed and counted again. Still not enough. Brother Clyde put his arm around Mama. Prairie cried a little, and Sierra did too, because Prairie did. Jimmy Whiskers took Mama's hand and said, "Listen, Arvilla, I think you counted wrong. Let me have a try." So he picked up the dust and coins and tiny nuggets in his dirty brown palm and counted again, and, like the miracle of loaves and fishes in the Bible, lo, there was enough. "Now how did I miss counting those big nuggets there?" Mama asked as Prairie and Sierra jumped up and down shrieking in glee. Jimmy just shrugged and smiled. His front teeth were gone. He winked at me. A few days and Mama and Clyde, Prairie and Sierra would be gone, heading for San Francisco, where Brother and Mama could be married by a preacher before they all boarded a ship, carrying hides, calico, lumber, and missionaries to the Sandwich Islands. Although wagons couldn't get through yet, the paths were clear enough for folks and mules, so they made plans for crossing the mountains to Marysville with others who were leaving. Poker John Lewis and Millie from the saloon, who were going to San Francisco to marry and open a card parlor, Ripley Gergens, who had his eye on a German widow and her farm over near Colusa, Billy and Beppy Parker going home to Indiana, and Amos Frog on to Colorado. Even Flapjack, who said he had been in the mountains longer than God, left, saying with a smack of his empty gums, "I'm going to find me some gold easier to dig." It looked like Lucky Diggins was plumb closing down. The morning of their departure, I walked with Mama, Clyde, Prairie, and Sierra to where the group waited at the foot of the ravine path. The girls were lifted onto Apostle's back, and Mama carried what little she owned in a sack made from a tent that had been made from a blanket that had once most likely been something else. How could they venture over the burned-out, pathless mountains and the unknown sea like this? So vulnerable and so poor. I kissed Clyde on the cheek and said, "Take good care of them." Clyde tipped his hat and said, "God and I will both watch over them, Sister Lucy, with the help of Bernard Whipple from heaven." "Prairie," I said, hugging her, "help Mama like I did." Prairie's eyes twinkled behind her spectacles. "You're right," I admitted. "That wouldn't be hard. Help Mama better than I did." I hugged her sturdy little body. "And you, Sierra?" "We're going on a boat, Lucy." It was Sierra's turn to lose a tooth. I felt so old. "We're going to see whales and gold and pick bread from trees." Jimmy Whiskers kissed Sierra and Prairie, and even Mama, saying, "Sorry you have to go, Arvella, just when your bread was getting fit to eat." Mama hugged me, and we both started crying. Then she stood back and looked at me. Really looked at me. "I've never known quite what to make of you, girl. I was so afraid you were weak and dreamy like your pa." "Mama, Pa wasn't weak." "Lucy, allow me to know something. You're not the only smart one here." "But Mama," I said, as much for old time's sake as for the argument, and we both laughed while we cried. "You're just like your Pa in some ways, my girl, many of them good." Mama hugged me again. "But mostly you're like me. Isn't that a corker?" I grabbed Mama then and held on like I was drowning. "Mama, when will I see you again?" Tears ran down Mama's face. "We're going to the Sandwich Islands, Lucy, not dying. We'll see you again. We got to. We're family." Mama turned to head up the path, then turned her back to me and opened her mouth. I stopped her, straightened her sack, and said, "Go, Mama. I'll cry sometimes and miss you like anything, but don't worry. I'll be fine." That was mostly to reassure Mama, but as I said it, I realized it was true. I'd be fine. Soon as the way was clear, Belle and Mr. Rush and Fanny Melinda and I would be getting in a wagon, heading east and going home. When the group had struggled up the ravine path and disappeared into the trees, it was all I could do to keep from running after them. Mama gone, and Prairie and Sierra, and Bernard, Snowshoe, and Amos Frog. I felt so alone. I went out to the meadow and had a long talk with Butte and a good cry. And that is the end of chapter 18.